103. And I'd like to start with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if we could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Mr. Guevara, can you take the roll call, please?
Mr. Anger?
Here.
Mr. Helm? Here. Mr. Fritz?
Here.
Mr. Mahoney?
Here.
Mr. Steiner?
Here.
Garverick's present.
Okay, thank you. Approval of the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to review the agenda for tonight?
I make a motion that we approve the agenda as it stands.
Supported. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, approval of the minutes from May 26th, 2021. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes? Are there any changes, additions, deletions?
Motion to approve the minutes of the July 21 meeting.
Support.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I have a question regarding this rezoning. When did that property in question?
all right, we're going to have a public hearing in shortly.
Are we
For it.
going to have the,
It's coming up.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to change that motion. I made a mistake. I meant it's May 26th meeting, not July.
It was a long time ago. Okay.
I support the addition or the change.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. This is limited to 3 minutes. State your name and address if you decide to make a public comment. Anything you want.
Anything on the agenda?
Concerning this piece of property that's rezoned.
Can you stand up here, the microphone?
That's not for
Can
that.
everybody hear me from here?
Oh,
Jody.
Yes or no?
hang on. Hold on, sir.
This is public comment time for anything, but the public hearing will be open for the public to have an opportunity to speak specifically on the public
So anything other
rezoning.
than that?
Anything other than the public hearing they can speak on, but they can wait to speak on the public hearing. We'd like to keep that all together.
Okay.
I just have a question on the motion that you just approved. When did this piece of property,
Excuse me, sir, you have to come to the mic.
yes, excuse me. I'm sorry. My name's Carl Zemke.
Go ahead. Go to the microphone. We'll wait.
My name's Carl Zemke. I live right next to the cemetery of this piece of property that we're talking about. And I look back on it, and I'm trying to figure out when this property came from commercial to residential. Was that approved by a zoning board? Did that come up for a vote here within the zoning commission here? Was it up for public discussion as far as it going from commercial to residential? Because the way I'm understanding this now, all of a sudden, it wants to go Resi 1 to multifamily. And myself, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. I'll probably sell out. I'm sure most of the neighbors over here probably will too. I don't know what the agenda is. I don't know who bought the property. I know it went up for auction. I don't know what price it went up for, how it went out. It just seems to me that that property sat there for a long time. I moved here in 2006, and we moved out of Toledo, moved up here, looked for a place to retire, which I'm retired now. We're both retired. And living next to multifamily, it just seems like bad juju to me. It doesn't seem like it's the correct thing to do. When you look at the front end of the north end, you look at the south end of historic Lambertville, and you got signs all over the place. says historic, welcome to historic Lambertville. Welcome to historic Lambertville. Now, I live right next to probably the biggest piece of history, which is the cemetery. Okay, there's people that have been buried there since 1840s, and I'm sure Mr. Lambert's probably buried there also. I haven't really looked, but I guess what I'm trying to say is my property was originally built in 1916. It was the caretaker's property. Historic Lambertville. This is history, okay? Then, after the caretaker died, when I moved in, we still had the casket wagons sitting in
30
front.
seconds.
Correct? Yes.
30 seconds.
I'm sorry?
30 seconds.
30 seconds, so that's all I have?
Yep.
30 seconds?
Excuse me, he can come back up at the public hearing and speak, but this is for general public comment, which is normally limited to 3 minutes.
Okay, so in wrapping all this up, okay, so then the next person to own my home was Dr. Parmalee. Now, does that name ring a bell?
Okay. You can speak at the public hearing.
I'm sorry?
You can speak at the public hearing.
Okay.
Okay?
Now, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, what?
You can speak at the public.
This is not a public hearing?
No, this is general comments.
This is general comments. Okay, so here's my general comment.
Well,
okay?
your 3 minutes are up.
Do I
I'm
still
sorry.
have 30 seconds or?
No.
All right, so I'll come back up.
Okay. Okay, anybody else wish to make a public comment? Okay, we'll move on to new business. Open the public hearing regarding the request from Village Meadows Holdings LLC for a rezoning request of parcel number 5802-019-125-05 from R3 LVOD to one-family residential within the Lambertville Village Overlay District to RM1 LVOD multifamily within Lambertville Village Overlay District, located on the north side of Dean Road, west side of Seacourt, Lambertville, Michigan 48144. Jody, do you have anything to add?
Yes. Again, the request is from Village Meadows LLC. The owner is Bryce Bankowski. It's a vacant parcel, currently zoned R3 within the Village, Lambertville Village overlay, and the request is for RM1 multifamily, also still within the Village Overlay District. Approximately 2.24 acres, 5802-019-12505. The request is to rezone from R3 LVOD, one-family residential within the Lambertville Village Overlay District, to RM1 LVOD, multifamily residential within the Lambertville Village Overlay District. The subject parcel has approximately 224.92 feet of frontage on Seacourt and 337.9 feet of frontage on Dean Road, and is approximately 2.24 acres. The applicant has stated the intent is to develop a mixed use of commercial and multifamily on the vacant parcel. Per section 400.1702B, Lambertville Village Overlay District, number 4, a mixing of residential uses with office and/or commercial uses is encouraged within the overlay district. On any parcel within the overlay district, the mixing of residential and non-residential uses as outlined above in permitted uses shall be permitted by right, subject to the additional requirements. Per section 400.1702B, number 1, under permitted uses, those uses permitted as principal uses in the underlying residential zoning district. While the existing R3 LVOD would provide for a mixed development to include commercial development and one-family development, the developer's intent is to develop a mix of commercial and multifamily uses, and the existing R3 one-family residential district would not permit a multiple family development, thus requiring the rezoning request. The surrounding zonings are North R3 one-family residential and C2 shopping center, South and West C1 local commercial and R3 one-family residential, East R2B one-family residential and C1 local commercial, and all of those surrounding zoning districts are also within the Lambertville Village Overlay District. The master plan designates this site as Village Center. This is an intent to promote a concentrated pedestrian-oriented environment and recognize the historical rural villages, providing a mix of residential, retail services, and offices. A walkable mixed-use area with offices and housing above retail or restaurant on the first floor to include the unincorporated villages of Samaria, Temperance, and Lambertville. The Planning Department requested a review of the rezoning to be conducted by Lucy Fortin of the Manick and Smith Group, the planner for Bedford Township. Ms. Fortin prepared an overall review of the subject area and concluded the proposed zoning and use is consistent with the goals and policies of future land use of Bedford Township's master plan. In conclusion, it was requested the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the Township Board to approve the rezoning request for the following key reasons. A mixed-use development with apartments above commercial is consistent with the Township's master plan and the Lambertville Village Center future land use designation. The property is less than 1 mile north of the Township's DDA and the primary business center, which presents opportunities for future pedestrian connection. A mixed-use development is supported by nearby utility infrastructure, and adequate room is afforded to not only preserve the site's natural features, but also to alleviate some of the negative impacts of potential higher density development with a lower density use through screening and landscaping. And the applicant is here as a developer. Once the public hearing is closed, he could probably answer any further questions any of the residents may have.
Okay, thanks, Jody. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
Make the motion to open the public hearing.
Support?
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, motion to open the public hearing has been adopted.
Good?
Yes.
Anybody else? Okay.
And remember to state your name and your address
Yes,
when you come up to the podium.
yes, I will.
Thanks.
My name's Carl Zemke. It's Carl with a K. Last name is Zemke, Z-I-E-M-K-E. And we live at 3356 Dean Road, along with my wife Sandy. And like I say, we moved here in 2006, but never really thought that anything would happen out of this piece of property. I know that Laura Collins went and bought a little piece of the pie there to improve her parking capabilities off the back, because she owns all the way up to the post office, correct? And Jamie over here, he owns up to the back end of me. Mike Bell lives across the street from me. Mike, and yeah, we had a little bit of discussion over all this, but the main thing I want to cut this to the quick, being that it is historic, okay. And I don't really see the relevance of putting a multifamily. We've already got tons of multifamily down the road, down Stearns Road, across Summerlin. Tons of multifamily over there, but they're not apartments; they're condos, and people have to buy into them. Now, when you're talking apartments, people don't have to buy into this. I bought into this piece of property. I bought into it, and when people move up here, they don't have to buy into it. They can move in, they can move out, and they take their troubles in and they take their troubles out. Okay, I'm not going to say any more about that. Okay. But what I am going to say, I think you folks need to look outside the box. I think the people here within this Lambertville community need to think outside of the box, okay? How about, I understand you already got an offer, okay? You already got an offer, but what's the chance of some deep-pocketed Lambertville community leaders ponying up a little bit, buy the property back, and creating a Lambertville Opera House? There's plenty of parking all the way down, up and down the road. And I'm sure that between Sidelines, Bob Eli's, Doolittle's, everybody up and down the road would love to be able to cater to them.
You have about 15 seconds.
I'm sorry,
15 seconds.
15 seconds? Well, that's my proposal. I just think outside of the box, okay? That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
My name is James Janowitz. I live at 8264 Monroe Road. Rather see the property stay residential. Property backs up to me, and I really don't want to see a building that's high-rise and people in and out all day long. A nice piece of property, make it stay residential.
Thank you.
After you guys discuss
Can you come up to the microphone?
My name is Tim Oswald, 6665 Greenbrier, Temperance, Michigan. After you guys discuss this, are we going to be able to talk again, or are we done? This is our one chance to
This is
talk.
your one chance.
Okay. That property, wasn't it at one time zoned commercial? When Jim Nyan had the sign out there, he had it stated that it was commercial. When did it get changed, or did that fall under the Bedford overlay setup that he could advertise it as being a piece of commercial property?
I can give further clarification once the public hearing is closed and the developer has an opportunity to speak.
Okay.
Okay, well, what happens is before that property's been sold a number of times. Family Video's tried to do it. You know, there's been some other commercial applicants that have been tried to do it, and it's been shut down because of the infrastructure. So if this is turned into a multifamily with some retail, is the infrastructure going to fall under the same restrictions as it did then, where they're going to have to curb and gutter and put a deceleration lane on Dean Road and not allow a curb cut on Secor? I'd like to just know what infrastructure plans are this with. Once we brought up commercial, now we run into deceleration lane, curb and gutter. There's a drainage issue there where the post office is. They've got all their water holding tanks because that drain's already maximized running down Secor Road to the creek. That's my concern, is the infrastructure who's going to pay for that? Contractor, the township? If it does go to that, who's going to cover the nickel? That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
For a point of interest, what happens here, we, as the planning commission, we recommend to the township, and they make the final decision on this. So you will have another chance at the board meeting, correct?
Township board meeting.
Township.
Yes, at the township board level. However, the public hearing is held, so the township board at least has some direction of public comment.
Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, who's representing the
I make a
developer?
motion to close the public hearing.
Okay.
A second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. The public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes, sir.
Just real quick, another thing before Mr. Bankowski comes up for clarification. It was mentioned that we have an offer already there. Just remember, township has nothing to do with the property, the ownership, the transfer. Anybody else want to try to buy it? Township has nothing to do with that whatsoever. That is strictly between the current owner and the buyer. So that part we have no control over. What the township has control over is this planning commission goes through all the details, makes a recommendation, yay or nay, and then if it's a recommendation to go forward, it goes to the township board, and the township board then makes final decisions once all the details are on the table. But the township itself has nothing to do with any of the sale, purchase, or anything like that. We control the laws and the rules of zoning and ordinance and things like that, but not anything to do with the sale. That's all.
Okay. Is Mr. Bankowski here?
My name is Bryce Bankowski, 9265 Village Meadows Drive. I'm Bryce Bankowski, address 9265 Village Meadows Drive, Temperance, Michigan.
Do you want to elaborate on anything we've already discussed? On the project itself, maybe, and then we'll go into some of the other issues that were brought up.
Yeah, so some of my thoughts on what I want to do with the property. I'd like to do something I think that would fit in good with the Lambertville Village. Do a little bit of commercial storefront on Secor Road, which is already allowed without the rezoning, with it being in the Village Overlay District. So there's no change there. The difference is I'd like to, rather than develop the whole site commercial, I'd like to put some multifamily townhouses behind the commercial to kind of serve as a buffer from commercial into residential.
Anybody have a question for Mr. Bankowski?
Mr. Mahoney?
Go ahead, Rick.
So, again, this is the way planning and everything is sort of a strange process. We can base recommendations on certain criteria, but we cannot sit here and say, well, we force you to only do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we can't hold you. If you say today that this is exactly what we're going to put there, and tomorrow you make a different decision, that's your decision. We can't control that, just so everybody is aware of that. So that's why we have to be very diligent about what we do. So, again, I've known you for a while. You know, you've been a good builder. So your intent is to do some commercial, and you said maybe some townhouses. Now, would the townhouses be townhouses for rental properties? Would they be townhouses for purchase properties? I mean, just what's the thought process?
They would be for rental.
Okay.
With a small site, though, you're not talking a whole huge development.
Right.
It's,
I mean, what are you thinking? Maybe 3, 4 units, 5 units? If they're townhouses, they.
yeah, I guess it all depends. I got to go through all the details on parking spaces and detention ponds and stuff like that.
But not an apartment building.
It would be a townhouse building is what I'm
So one,
planning.
it would be a regular, like an apartment building, not separate townhouses.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, probably 15.
Okay. The gentleman that spoke earlier made comment to the infrastructure. Any thoughts on the current infrastructure there? And I see Ms.
I just wanted to remind the board that the applicant is not required to show a site plan, or
Right.
The intent is just for the rezoning, and that the project will have to go through site plan approval. So those infrastructures, drainage, curb cuts, all of that will be handled once the developer moves forward with the engineer and architect to design the site. It will go to the Monroe County Road Commission and the Monroe County Drain Commission. I believe he'll probably have to work with Eagle through the state. So all of those issues he will learn to address through the site plan approval process. So it will go back through a site plan approval process.
And the site plan approval also comes back to this board before it goes to the township board. But I was just trying to get an idea, if you had any idea of the infrastructure itself.
No, I know everything is there. I haven't gone to the extent to see what it can handle.
Right, maybe because I know it's going to take, at some point, if it goes through, then it's going to take your development, your engineering and things. That's where the money starts to come in. You start to pay all the other professionals out there to go through that and tell you what you can or can't do based on what's there. So,
Have you thought about how you'll buffer the adjacent properties?
What's that?
Have you thought about how you'll buffer the adjacent properties? Because that property wraps around the house that's there, right?
Yeah, that was my biggest concern, is that house that's there, because every other property that touches that or is around it, every house that's directly across the street or property is all commercial are being used as commercial. Collins behind it is a business office, and then it butts to the post office. So there is the one house there. I haven't put a lot of thought into it, but I had planned on doing some sort of buffer there, whether it's a line of trees to completely block it out. But I had intent to do something there to create a buffer.
Any questions from you guys? Comments? Jody?
And I just wanted to give one more clarification for the question on the zoning of the property. The zoning has actually always been R3 within the Lambertville Village Overlay District. However, within the overlay district, there is the opportunity to either develop commercial or residential and commercial. So as the property exists today, you could put a commercial building and have residential behind the structure or on the second floor. So it allows for that. But as a planning department, we determined in discussions with Mr. Bankowski that if his intent was to have more than one single-family home, he would have to seek the rezoning to multifamily to allow more than one on a strip of commercial. So the property has already lended itself to be commercial use, and that is probably why the comment was made that the previous owner advertised it for sale for commercial, because it would be permitted.
Okay. Joe? Mr. Gabriel?
Yeah, so if I get this right, he could build as it is, and you're talking about doing this and actually help as a buffer by doing this for the other houses and stuff. And I think the only one it affects right next to it is Mr. Abel's, is that correct? That butts up to it?
I believe you're correct.
Okay.
Me also.
Pardon?
That affects me too. That property right behind my house,
Where do you live at, sir?
8264 Monroe Road. That property going alongside the cemetery.
Okay.
That's a whole shot, whole view.
Okay.
15, saying 15, that's a mini subdivision.
But he can do commercial right now if he wants to do the whole thing commercial.
Understand
So,
that. So can I.
okay. I guess my thought is Mr. Benkowski, and know him a little bit, he builds well in that. And I guess if I was living there, you know, I would want that versus complete commercial, because that's not regulated, I think, and we can do it. So, you know, it's a tough deal. It fits in the overlay district. It fits under it, and tomorrow he can grab an investor and say, hey, let's do this. And we're not here, but I think with the PUD, we have control, and it goes through the board. Is that correct, Rick? And
Well, this isn't PUD.
oh, it's not a PUD.
No.
But they'll have input on trees and just everything and stuff, correct?
Well,
All landscape.
a PUD, the township has a little bit more say, sort of taking a lead a little bit more at times
Okay.
for making requirements. In this case, an applicant can come forward and say, at the site plan phase, he could say, well, I can do this, this, and this. And then the township can lead into it and say, okay, we can agree with you doing those things.
But we still will have plantings and stuff, right, Jody, and
Absolutely.
everything?
It will go through site plan approval process,
Okay.
and it will come back to the planning for review. It will go, like I said, to all those outside agencies, and it will comply with the ordinances of the overlay district.
And that's
Because it
where
does have different requirements in the overlay, and I did provide that to
Thank
the
you.
board.
And that's where the engineering comes in, that's where all any bufferings, any screenings, any berming, parking. If the road commission says you have to put a turn lane, curb and gutters, all that stuff, that will all come in because, he may think that he's got one direction and those other outside agencies that have some control, such as the road commission, drain commission, they may come in and say, no, you have to do this. Now, they can do that. We can't do it, but those agencies can do that and demand it.
Any other questions from anybody?
Permission to speak?
I'm sorry,
No, he's already on the floor. Question to the audience.
no, I'm sorry.
Oh, you guys can talk, but I can't.
There's a procedure we follow to keep,
Excuse me.
yeah, I'm sorry, there's a procedure we have to
I
follow.
understand Robert's Rules of Order.
Right.
completely.
Good.
I understand.
I guess to go along with your vision, are we looking two-story properties in those rentals? Are they higher end, lower end?
Most likely two-story. I would plan on doing higher end. I personally don't want to deal with managing lower end rentals, so I plan on keeping them nice, keeping good people in them. So.
Any other questions? Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Brankowski.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick, did you mention we are one member short?
I will when we get to the vote. Is there any more discussion? Okay, Mr. Bankowski, we are one voting member short. You can wait until we get a full commission, or we can vote tonight. It's up to you. You can go ahead and vote. Okay. All right. Any motion on issue A, item A?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to, let me get my bearings here, to recommend to the Board of Trustees to rezone parcel number 5802-019-12505 from R3 LVOD, one family residential within the Lambertville Village Overlay District, to RM1 LVOD, multifamily residential within the Lambertville Village Overlay District. Reasons including what Ms. Fortner has laid out is a mixed-use development with the apartments above commercial is consistent with the Township Master Plan and the Lambertville Village Center future land use designation. The property is less than 1 mile north of the Township DDA and primary business center, which presents opportunities for future pedestrian connection. A mixed-use development is supported by nearby utility infrastructure, and adequate room is afforded to not only preserve the site's natural features, but also to alleviate some of the negative impacts of the potential higher density development with any lower intensity uses through screening and landscaping.
Okay, any second? Any support for the motion?
I'll support.
Mr. Helm supports. Mr. Gaverick, do you want to call the roll?
Mr. Fritz,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Garvick's aye, Mr. Helm,
Yes.
Mr. Anger.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Okay, item B.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I would just like to let the residents know that this will tentatively be requested to go to the Township Board on August 17th. It will be an in-person meeting here at the Township, and it's at 7 o'clock. It does not have a public hearing comment time. You would have to speak at the beginning of the meeting when it's open to the items on the agenda. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Mr. Bankowski would be happy to answer them as well.
Okay, Jody, do you want to go over item B?
This request is for a sign waiver for Bedford Public Schools, 1623 Westerns Road, Temperance, Michigan. The sign company is Graphic Signs. Contact is Kyle Young and Gary Harrell. There are all locations of the school. 8285 Jackman is the location of the junior and the senior high. 6875 Douglas Road, 8008 Jackman Road, 7979 Monroe Road, and 1135 Smith Road. They are all residentially zoned. I'm going to try to condense this a little bit. I incorporated them all into one analysis. The junior high and all the elementaries are asking for the same variance request, sign waiver request of the height in the sign. Some that we combined it into one, and then the high school is the only different sign. But to work with the school, They will have to submit building permits for each individual sign, but however, to eliminate each individual fee and application, we worked with them to make one application.
Will we be voting on one motion?
You'll be making two motions, one to include the high school, and then one to include the junior high parcel numbers and all of the elementaries.
Okay.
We
Or
don't have
would
to
you
do
like
those
them all separate?
I would think separate, so they're all separate properties, not even adjacent.
3 requests?
1, 2, 3. There's going to be 6 requests.
Six
So it'd be
requests.
6 motions, one for the high school, the junior high, Douglas Road, Jackman Road, Monroe Road, and Smith Road.
Okay, is Mr. Young here?
Did you want me to read the analysis real quick?
Oh, please, I'm sorry, Mr. Young. Can you wait a second?
The applicant is seeking to replace the existing monument sign at Bedford High School located 8285 Jackman Road, Temperance. The applicant is seeking to install a 51.11 square foot area signage to include an LED message board, a 39.72 square foot of base area with an overall height of 8.5 feet. The applicant noted in the submitted letter the proposed monument sign will be located further back into the property than the current side location. The applicant is also seeking to replace the existing monument sign at Bedford Junior High, Douglas Road, Jackman Road, Monroe Road, and Smith Road Elementaries. The applicant is seeking to install at each location a monument sign proposing 43.11 square foot of signage to include an LED message board and a 35.13 square foot of base area with an overall height of 7.5 feet. Per section 400.1922.6 in residentially zoned district for lots or parcels containing other than dwelling units, one identification sign per lot or parcel indicating the occupant and or permitted not exceeding 32 square feet in area, plus 32 square feet of base, and 5 feet in height is permitted. Per section 419.22.1.0 states no flashing, moving, oscillating, or intimate sign illuminated or displayed shall be permitted in any zoning district. Therefore, the Planning Commission shall determine how often the message can change so not to create a safety issue by distracting traffic. Therefore, the proposed sign for the high school requires a 19.11 square foot area waiver, a 7.72 square foot base waiver, and a 3.5 foot height waiver, and to allow an LED message board to be installed. The proposed signs for the junior high and elementary school locations require 11.11 square foot area sign waiver, a 3.13 square foot base area waiver, and a 2.5 foot height area, and to allow an LED message board. Currently, there are 2 signs located at 8285 Jackman Road, one for the high school and the second for the junior high, where by ordinance only 1 sign is permitted. The applicant is seeking to maintain the 2 signs on one parcel to continue to serve each location, especially for identification purpose. Should the request be considered, the following waivers are required. I'm not going to read all those again. The following shall be considered in any conclusion in any motion. All required permits shall be obtained from Bedford Township. The applicant shall continue to maintain the entire perimeter landscaped area of the base, no less than 2 feet wide, growing in healthy condition, and the sign must be located out of the road right-of-way and corner clearance.
Okay. Mr. Young, do you have anything you want to add?
I'm actually Gary, Gary Harrell.
Gary, okay. Can you state your name and address for the record?
It's Gary Harrell, 3443 Quail Hollow Drive, Lambertville.
Okay. Did you want to add anything?
No, she summed it up, it seemed like.
Okay, you're with the sign company?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any comments? Mr. Gaverick?
I think Gary does a great job, and I think to help the schools here and what's going on, I have no issue with it at all. And I think it's great that they want to do this, and I think the LED boards are going to be great. So I don't have any issue with any of them at all. So.
And one thing I do want to add is the signs will all have the same aesthetic look. Every one of them are mimicking each other than the names of the school. So trying to, give it a nice consistent look.
Okay. Mr. Inger?
I think they look amazing. The size, I think, fits the high school lots. It's a big area, and it's nice to have clear visual of where you're supposed to go, or if you're not familiar with the area. And I do want to say that we should probably include our LED message board 5-second interval.
Ask you to do that, because you're good at it.
Just so it's consistent with all that we do for safety purposes too, and to have it dim at dusk as well, because there's a couple signs I've seen that are near blinding. They're so bright at night. So that's all I have.
Mr. Helm?
I agree. I think they look great, and it'll be a good, asset for the people coming into town looking for the schools and what's going on. Absolutely, and Gary does a great job.
Will they be operating 24/7, do you know, or is there a plan to shut it off at 9, or?
Typically, they run 24/7. Again, it does have the capabilities of shutting down. The other thing that, as a sign company, I don't like them to shut completely off, because at a point it looks broke if there's nothing on it. Again, I can't speak for.
Okay, but they'll dim at sunset?
Yeah, and it does have a sensor that reads, it's much brighter during the day in sunlight and then at night, and that's also controllable. And we did a sign just recently that was a little too bright at night, and we were able to tone that down, and I believe that resolved the issues at the township. I know they were getting some calls, and it was just, they were new with it, and they were just getting used to, making the proper adjustments, so.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments, questions? Is there a motion on the floor to,
Is there 5 or 6 motions on the floor?
6? Yeah, we'll have to do each one separately.
Is the junior high and high school together because they're on the same parcel?
The sizes of the signs are different, but.
They'll need two separate motions because the signs are different.
How do we do that with the allowing 2 signs on a parcel motion then?
Where I have, should the request be considered for the high school, I have to allow 2 existing signs to serve on one parcel because they're already
Okay,
existing.
so for the high school, and that's when we make the motion for 2 signs?
I would put it with the high school,
Okay.
yes.
Just clarifying.
I would make the motion. I don't know where to start. Do we just want to say that the following waivers are required, and for what it says? I'm sorry.
Oh, pardon me, 1 second. Are we doing one vote, or are we doing one for each sign?
One for each side.
Okay.
That this would be the motion for the high school. And it would say the following waivers are required, a 19.11 square feet sign area waiver, and then the second dot, a 7.72 square foot base area waiver, a 3.5 foot height waiver for monument sign, approval to allow the LED message board, and allow 2 existing signs to serve on one parcel. And then also, we would want it to dim at dusk.
Flash rate?
And you
And
want
a
to
flash rate of 5,
No more frequently than 5 seconds?
yeah, 5 seconds.
And then all these, Ron. All these need to be part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, excuse me, and then the bottom part of that too, where all required permits shall be obtained from Bedford Township, applicant shall continue to maintain the entire perimeter landscaping and space, no less than 2 feet wide, growing and a healthy condition. The sign must be located outside of the right-of-way and corner clearance.
I'll second.
Okay, we have support for the motion. Mr. Gaverick, you want to call the roll?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jody.
We still need to ask the applicant.
That's right. We need another commission member fast. All right, we are 1 commission member short. We can delay the vote, or we can take the vote now.
No,
It's up to
go
you.
ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, so we have support for the motion for the high school sign. Mr. Gaverick, do you want to call the roll?
Mr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Helm,
Yes.
Mr. Anger,
Yes.
Mr. Garvich, yes, Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
and Mr. Fritz.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Okay, let's start with, you want to start with Monroe Road Elementary?
Can we do the junior high?
Junior high.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the junior high and, just the junior high for the following waivers. 11.11 square foot sign area waiver, a 13.13 square foot base area waiver, a 2.5 foot height waiver, and approve to allow the LED message board dim at dusk, and also for the 5-second.
Flash rate.
Yeah, flash rate. And then also, as all the following ones, we're going to include them 3 points at the bottom. Okay.
Are we good with that, Mr. Camperth?
I believe so, yes. He included all the required waivers plus the information on the bottom.
Okay, do we have a second?
Support?
Okay, Mr. Inger supports. Mr. Rivera, call the roll.
Mr. Helm,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Garvix, aye. Mr. Fritz, and
Aye.
Who'd I miss? Mr. Anger.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Should we go down to Douglas Road Elementary?
Yes.
Sure.
Douglas Road? Okay, is there a motion on the floor?
I guess I'll make a motion.
Would you like us to continue, or
For the
would you
what?
like to wait?
Go ahead.
Okay.
For the waiver at the Douglas School signs.
It's under the same as the junior high one.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. It's on this page.
Yeah. Douglas Road, it would be a 11.11 square foot sign area waiver, a 13.13 square foot base area waiver, a 2.5 foot height waiver, approval to allow LED message board. Also, it would dim at dusk, and the 5-second flash rate. And then also include the 3 points following. And that is for Douglas Road.
Support?
Douglas Road.
Okay, motion is supported. Mr. Rivera, do you want to call the roll?
Mr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Helm,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mr. Garvix, yes. Mr. Anger,
Yes.
Mr. Fritz.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. On to Jackman Road Elementary.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the waiver for Jackman Road. It would be a 11 square foot sign area waiver, a 13.13 square foot base area waiver, a 2.5 foot height waiver, and approval for allow the LED message board. Dim at dusk, 5-second flash rate, and also contain the 3 points.
Okay, are you okay for us to take a vote tonight?
Yes.
Or would you like to- Okay, we'll take a vote. We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Mr. Steiner seconds. Mr. Rivera, call the roll.
Mr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Garvix, aye. Mr. Anger,
Aye.
Mr. Helm,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
and Mr. Fritz.
Aye.
Okay.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the waiver for Monroe Road. I have a question on that. Monroe Road, that's in Lambertville, is it not?
I believe it
Correct.
is.
You got temperance there.
Okay, you can just probably put it in the motion that it's Lambertville.
Okay. Just. That motion will include a 11.11 square foot sign area waiver, a 13.13 square foot base area waiver, a 2.5 foot height waiver, approval for the LED message board, dim at dusk for the sign, and a 5-second flash rate. Also include the 3 points.
Support?
Are you okay if we proceed with the vote?
Yes.
Being one member short? Okay. So we have support from Mr. Anger. Mr. Rivera, call the roll.
Mr. Helm,
Aye.
Mr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Garvix, aye.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Anger, Mr. Fritz.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0.
I thought it was the last one again.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the sign waiver for Smith Road Elementary, which would include a 11.11 square foot sign area waiver, a 13.13 square foot base area waiver, a 2.5 foot height waiver to allow the LED board, message board. The board would also dim at dusk and have a 5-second flash rate. And it would also include the 3 points.
We're one commission member short. Would you like us to continue
Yes.
tonight? Okay. We have motion on the floor.
Second.
Mr. Steiner seconds. Mr. Guevara, call the roll.
Mr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Helm,
Aye.
Mr. Anger,
Yes.
Garbage, yes. Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mr. Fritz.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Did we do them all?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, on to item C. Discussion regarding proposed ordinance language to allow chicken keeping in residentially zoned districts. So Jody was nice enough to put everything together that we'd been talking about and agreed to put into such an ordinance. There was one item we have to agree on. If there's anything you guys want to add, we can do that now. Jody, go ahead.
Yes, and I was looking back over through the language, and on letter 8C for coops and cages housing chickens, the commission did determine 10 feet from the property line and 15 feet from the main building. However, I've looked back through other languages concerning fencing, anything in the front yard, and I think the commission may want to discuss that those coops or cages shall not extend beyond the front building line or the required front yard setback, whichever is greater, is what we require for fencing in the front yard, and for accessory buildings can't be in the front yard, so that may be something that may want to be discussed. And then, of course, the permitting process, whether we wanted to require a permit. I think requiring a permit, I know discussions from previous minutes had been regarding ordinance enforcement. I think a permitting process showing a plot plan where the coops are going to be, how many chickens, showing the setbacks. And I did speak with the ordinance department and the building department, and the building department is willing to take in the permits. Building official, planning department, and ordinance would all sign off. I know I gave a draft of one before, but I can bring that back if you're so desire to move forward. But letter J states 3 documented violations of these ordinance requirements within the ordinance enforcement department will result in a revocation of the permit, and chickens shall be removed. Difficult to do that if we don't require a permit process. So that's why we should have some further discussion on the desire of the commission. That's all I have.
Can I
Okay.
ask a question?
Go ahead, Mr. Fritz.
On J, we just got off of, who would be the person that removed the chicken?
Pardon me?
Who would remove the chickens?
And where are they going to take them to?
Indian Creek Zoo.
The
homeowner.
Any local zoo.
What was that, Marty?
The homeowner, it's the homeowner's chickens.
And it would be his place to remove them?
Yes, if the permit is violated or removed, revoked, then the chickens would have to be removed.
Well, is that open for interpretation? Do we want to say the homeowner would remove it?
Or what if they don't?
That would be fine, that's a good idea.
Hypothetical question, if they don't remove them, is that a court thing, Marty? If they don't?
Well, it would be a violation of the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
That would be the remedy, violation of the ordinance.
Would they wind up in county court then, in Monroe?
First violation would be civil infraction. The violation of the zoning ordinance is now civil infractions rather than misdemeanors.
So they wind up in Monroe County Court?
Only if they don't pay their civil infraction ticket.
So we would issue, as a township, would issue it?
A violation of the ordinance, yes.
Marty, when you say violation, and because this says 3, is that the violation after 3, then you're saying go to court as the first?
The third violation is a revocation of the permit, right?
Correct.
The way I read it. So if the permit, after 3 violations, 3 strikes, they're out.
So that's why I wanted to clarify, because it's really 3 strikes before it goes to court, not 1 strike.
Right.
And I guess 3 violations is a lot. I struggle a little bit with 3. Now, if you're talking 3 over 3 years, okay. If you're talking 3, and then if the violation is remedied, let's just say they remedy it within the first couple days or a week. And then 2 weeks goes by, he's in violation again. Fixes it, 3 to 5 days, well, now we got another one. So is 3, I mean, because somebody could just say, oh, I'll just keep doing it. Or when they get to a certain point, they'll say, okay, I'll clean it up this time so I don't get the 3rd one, I won't go to court. Okay, I'll be good for 6 months, year, and maybe nobody will catch me, or nobody will complain. So, a year later, then here we hit number 3. Just food for thought.
Question.
Mr. Guevara?
I guess a couple questions, Marty and Jody, is what does other townships or city Toledo do? One, do they have a 3-strike rule? And Marty, is that something that's usually you give them that much time, I guess, on other type things, or I don't.
No,
Okay.
not usually.
Okay.
This is wrought with problems.
Okay. I agree with Rick. Then it just you could drag it out so much. You know what I mean? Yeah.
What do other zoning ordinances that we have, what kind of, is it 1 strike and you're a civil infraction?
Yes. Usually the building department or the ordinance enforcement people would go out and say, hey, you're in violation. Can you take care of this? Can you fix this? And they get them maybe a letter, warning, try and work with the people and get it taken care of. That's the goal, to be in compliance.
Correct.
Not to violate people.
And so, too, some of the ordinance things, though, too, depending on what they are, I think some of it's 30 days for compliance. And
Correct.
There's been some major building issues that the township has worked with that have gone over the 30 days. So probably need a stipulation that says, okay, if they're in violation, maybe we give them a warning, and your warning is it has to be completed within 7 days.
I think that's a more realistic.
And then if you don't fix it, or you get the second, which is a true violation, not just a warning, then it becomes the civil infraction.
I guess from a planning standpoint too, I think the difference is when it's a building, the building department sends the ordinance out, and it's something that can be remedied. They can fix the electrical, or they can fix what is wrong. I think when you're looking at this, it's going to be, it could be they have too many chickens, or then it could be the smell or the odor, or then so it's not going to be the same type of violation of just fixing one. So the violation is, as Rick said, it could be one week, but something different another week. So where do you draw what violation for a building violation is?
Yeah, if you live next
Corrected.
door and you had problem A, and they took care of it a couple weeks later, then you go to B problem, and they just compound. There's so many different things that can be a problem here, and it would all be different.
And you said, Jody, about the fences in the front yard. If somebody wanted chickens in their front yard, they could?
That's why I presented that it doesn't say that in the discussions that we've had. That was not discussed, so it should be something maybe the board might want to discuss, because we allow fences of 3.5 feet in the front yard, but we don't allow accessory buildings, and I would assume a coop would have some type of roof structure, which would then consider an accessory.
But if they have the coop in the back, use their front yard as a run free range.
I think they should be limited to the backyard.
So
I mean,
that's a
this is
discussion
what
that
I've
you
been
may want to
thinking about.
have.
I don't know how you guys
Behind the
feel.
front of the house, or whatever.
Unless with a
Legal
leash.
permit.
But what about when you let them out, the building's there and it's X,
No structure or no use past the front building line.
Well, on letter D, the commission said all chickens must be kept confined within a fenced area when not in their building, pen, or other structure or permanent area.
But if your whole yard's fenced in, what I'm saying, they could be in your front yard technically, right?
They could be in your front yard.
Your coop could be in the back and they go home to roost. I'm just.
So that would be a discussion the commission may want to say that there shall be no chickens permitted in the front yard, period, whether it be the coop or fenced-in area.
Would anyone have an objection to adding that in, that they have to be kept in the backyard?
I don't.
I mean, what's the rule with dogs?
Brad probably's got a problem.
Is there a rule for dogs?
Not that I'm aware of for allowing them to be in your front yard, no.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing, except for dogs are more smelly. And bark at you.
Yeah, I think in both situations, it's not a good thing. When there's cars driving down the road and they can be a distraction, somebody might dodge a chicken and go into a tree, and we don't want that. And I like to maybe remind everybody, we don't have to recommend this. We haven't finalized or said, yeah, we're going to do this for sure. If we can't make this ironclad, I don't think we should do it, and we should recommend it.
Yeah, good.
Mr. Guevara.
On these coops that they run, are we calling to have lids on them? Because you can come to my zoo and see chickens 15 foot in the air. So if you know what I'm saying?
That would be the desire of the commission to recommend that.
Okay.
This is language that we've taken from meetings that you all have determined the direction to move forward with. So if you would like us to add anything, tonight would be the night.
If you have a guinea that falls under a chicken, they sleep 100 feet in the air. If you have the small chickens, they sleep in the air. You have regular meat chickens, they don't fly. So somebody could say it's in my coop. And it's
Does the coop need to have a roof?
not the coop, but the outside run pen, I would suggest, because you don't know what type of chicken a guy's going to buy at Tractor Supply. You get a banty rooster, they fly all over.
But you can't have
So
You
roosters.
can't have roosters.
If you had a pen that was 8 by 10 or 8 by 12, you come up with a number per that many chickens per square foot. Like the USDA says you have to have this many feet on any animal, I don't care if it's bears, whatever, square foot. So if we said there's 6 chickens and the run has to be no smaller than X with a lid on it, now you create the problem, it's not flying in a neighbor's yard, you stop that, I guess. So I think per square foot, don't have to be big, but if you have a coop,
Well, keep in mind, it does say you have to have at least a half an acre to have 2 chickens, and for each one have up to a maximum of 6 per lot
okay.
for
But-
each half acre. So if they have an acre, they can have 4 chickens.
Okay. But the coop itself, nobody's going to fence that whole thing and put a lid on it because you couldn't. But if you had a coop that was 8 by 10, or if we come up with the size and you say the 10, the run for 6 maximum chickens is 6 feet wide by 12 foot long with a roof on it, which could be chicken wire or netting or whatever. But I just think you're gonna open up a can of worms and say, you made these rules, but my chickens fly, and you didn't think of that.
Well, we don't want them flying over the fence into the neighbor's yard. And maybe if that's a big concern, we shouldn't recommend it. I believe people have the right to have a chicken if they have enough space, but, can you regulate this? And are we creating more of a hornet's nest or a Pandora's box than our officer who first came to the township with the problem of people arguing with him about what the ordinances are? Are we going to make this more nebulous, harder for him to enforce? I don't think we want to do that or go down that road. Anybody have a thought on that?
Well, I see a problem with D. All chickens must be kept confined within a fenced-in area when not in their building, pen, or other structures or permanent areas. What's the What's the difference in all them different areas and what makes them
Put your mic
permanent
up,
area?
Ron. I can't hear you. Put your mic up.
So that would be 8D is what I'm talking about, all those structures, permanent areas. What's the definition of a permanent area? That's going to come into play for the officer, I would think.
So there's 2 points that need to be clarified, I guess. It's the coop requirements. How do we define coop? Does it have a roof? Does it not have a roof? Does the backyard, do these chickens have to be confined to the backyard? Does it have to be fenced in? How is it fenced? Split rail? chain link, what's the minimum requirement? We need to maybe define those and reiterate it or put it back into this draft. And then regarding the permit, how much should the fee be? Any ideas on that?
Currently, right now, up to $1,000 is $25 for a building permit.
Is that the minimum, Jody?
That would be the minimum. 0 to 1,000 is $25 for a building
If you
permit.
build a $200 chick coop, it's still going to be 25, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So is $25 an acceptable amount? We can at least finalize something tonight.
I think $25 is fair.
Yeah, I mean, for 2 chickens, the people, they're probably just going to do this for a 4-H project
You think?
for the most part. Well, you get some people they pay more money for eggs that they raise the chickens than they would if they bought them at the stores, so.
Yeah, so we all in agreement, $25 can be added to this?
That's the
proposal?
minimum, whatever the minimum is, I would say.
Okay. I'll reiterate something I said in a past meeting. I really think there should be an FAQ that goes with this permit, and they should sign that they read it and understood it, what the real costs are to have a chicken, how much it costs to feed them, to house them, what you're going to do with all the eggs, how many eggs they produce, things that maybe people take for granted. Then how do you dispose of them when they're, you're tired of them? They stop producing eggs. Do they stop ever, or do they just die?
They die.
They just die?
They last about 2 years.
2 years?
I think we put in there no free-range chickens, because that's what people want to do it, and they say there's less cholesterol and everything else. So if we put no free-range and
But wouldn't it be free range if they had it in their whole yard?
no, as long as you had a lid on it. I think they need to, you have a coop and you have a
run.
pen outside, a 6x8 or 8x10, whatever we want, with a lid on it. They can't fly out.
No, but I'm saying that would be considered free range.
No,
If they-
free range is when you let them just go. People collect the eggs under trees and everything. So they have a coop, and a lot of people buy free range eggs
Oh, yeah.
because they say the cholesterol and stuff. But
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the verbiage of free range just keeps them inside a building or a attached outdoor run.
Is there anything else anybody would want to add to this draft of a proposal? Okay, I suggest we table this and maybe redefine some of these terms. If anybody wants to contribute and put your definition of what a coop would be, how big the fenced in, if it should be in the backyard, email me or Jody, and we'll incorporate it in this and then talk about it at another meeting. How does that sound? Everybody
Yes,
good with that?
please send me any input that you
I'll
have.
call you
And
too, Jody, on what the
Perfect.
USDA regulations are, so you have them.
Are
I think if we followed that and the square footage would be safe.
Can we make note of the things that we kind of decided on, the $25? Also, on J, we
Yes.
decided that just one violation?
Yeah.
So that's at least 2 things that we can cross off, right? $25, and J, change that to 1 violation.
And with that one violation, as we talked, do we give them a warning to clean it up 3 to 5, 7 days, whatever, and then if they don't, it becomes a full-blown violation?
I would say that
Warning's
would be
reasonable.
the officer there, it'd be his decision, just like I think it is now. If he gets a lot of flack and.
Well, we just don't want anybody to have perception of, oh, well, he favored that guy, let him off with a warning, and me, he hammered me and wrote me up right away and goes to court.
I
But
think
what
you
is
need
it
a
now?
7-day grace period for things like this. If it's a smell issue, you need to go clean your cage, and you can't do it instantly. So
Right.
you do need a little bit of a window.
It's reasonable.
If there's
7-day window to rectify the violation, right?
That would be under J,
Okay.
right?
And this is only on residential property, commercial property, it doesn't affect anything.
just residential.
Yes. Ms. Camperth, did you have something to add?
I guess my original thought is that you let the ordinance enforcement department deal with it in the best way they can in their discretion, in their experience. I mean, even a police officer may pull you over for a speeding ticket. They're going to use their discretion as to whether you get written a ticket or not, depending on the circumstances. I guess I don't know as if all cases you need to give a 7-day period to remedy the default or the violation. Maybe it's a good idea. It doesn't really matter to me whether you include the specific language or let it be to the ordinance enforcement just to get it taken care of.
In thinking that they would say, hey, I got 7 days, and then after 7 days it becomes a problem. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking like you said, like I said before, it's up to the officer. But
Who is our officer? What's his name?
Damon Cecil.
There is
Damon
Officer
Cecil.
Damon Cecil and Officer Shayla Pitson.
Is it okay if maybe you get some input from them?
Absolutely.
I think if they're going to be the ones dealing with it, they'll think of things we haven't thought of.
And I like that idea, Marty, because you go out and catch more bees with honey than vinegar. You know, hey, neighbor thinks it smells a little, can you clean it? Instead of just writing them, you know, and if the guy's nice about it, you know what I mean?
But I think the 7 days is still good. You know, again, discretion by the officer, but 7 days because if he says, okay, I'll give you a warning, you got to get it cleaned up. If you don't tell them it has to be within 7 days, they're going to say, well, that can take a month to do it. You know, we've got to give something because other than that, the officer has no teeth to even go there.
yeah.
I mean, what happens if nobody complained and all of a sudden the complaint came through and the officer goes there and it's a total disaster? And if it might take somebody more than 7 days just to clean up a terrible mess. So we've got to have that in.
Hopefully not with sick chickens, but.
Well, you would hope, but if somebody didn't complain for 2 years and they kept chickens going and going and going.
I'd be really curious to hear what Officer Cecil has to say about this.
I will get with him and see if he can either write up a memo of his opinion or his thoughts, how would they
That'd be a
handle
great
things,
idea.
or maybe he can attend the next meeting that we bring this back for the agenda item.
You can share this with them, what we've discussed so far.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we just
Awesome.
don't want to box them in.
Right. Yeah. Or make the situation worse than it was before.
Right.
Okay, are we okay with moving on to item D? Discussion regarding proposed ordinance language amendment to allow additional on-site sales in an I-2 light industrial zoning district for a composting facility. I guess if we're going to talk about this, we can't think about any existing company right now. It's just in general,
Correct.
correct?
And the ordinance itself is only one section of the ordinance. It's letter Z. Keep in mind that a composting facility does require a special approval. And the language as it reads currently, location of on-site commercial sales of products produced on-site from the composting operation that was determined to avoid any property owner removing mulch from the site, as on-site commercial sales are not permitted in an industrial zoning district. The proposed change in language is a location of on-site commercial sales of rocks, milling, screenings, and other materials produced on site from the composting operation. The question is did the commission determine if they want it to maintain and say other materials produced on site? Or were we maintaining with the rocks, milling, screenings, and just materials produced on site? Not other landscape materials. I know that was discussed last time. I proposed it as what we left it as through the minutes, but I believe there was discussion still of allowing other landscape materials. I know we talked
Are you talking about items not produced on site?
well, other than rocks, millings, and screenings. So I didn't know.
Like landscaping
Screen-
fabric, stuff like that?
Screenings is left to the interpretation, I believe. To me, screenings may be concrete boulders, maybe trees. That is a screening to me. So the commission needs to be clear on what type of landscape screening they want to permit, and also other landscape materials such as pavers, blocks, if we leave it open to landscape materials. So we just need to, I know we made a determination of the rocks and millings and materials produced on site. The confusion is screenings or other landscape material,
So we need to define what those terms mean.
or if you don't want them included in the language.
'Cause I'm a city boy, I had to look up what windrow was. I had no idea. What do you guys think screenings are? How would you define
I'm
screenings?
thinking that the screenings is when they take the compost and they might actually put screens up there that when they end up with like good sod or good black dirt, soil, it would include not the screenings. The screen there would catch in the stones and the rocks and maybe pieces of wood that you wouldn't want to put in your front yard when you put the black soil down. Topsoil.
And I'm thinking they're stones, right? Because you buy different size stones, and they're screened as different sizes,
Yeah,
correct?
but this would be whatever came in and they put it in the compost pile, is what I'm thinking.
The definition of a screening is a pulverized byproduct of stone crushing process at quarries and rock yards.
But I think this is something different. This is when they take the material, whatever they're gonna compost, and they put it in a big pile and it does its thing, whether it's in a big pile and they add lime to it, who knows? But when they screen that, before they send it to the customer, the topsoil should not have the rocks and all that in, because you're gonna put the topsoil in, right? And then that's what you're gonna plant your good grass in.
Mr. Steiner?
Well, let's get away from the compost and everything else. Screenings in general. Talk to a landscaper. That landscaper is going to tell you what Ms. Rector said. It could be trees. It could be fencing. It could be any kind of decorative type design that might put a barrier in your yard to screen you from the neighbor. It could be stone. It could be, sand. It could be, because stone and sand or dirt, it could be for making berms, to screen. So think of it that way. Anything to block a view or visual.
But I don't think that's what this was in reference to.
Yes, keep in mind, this is what he wants to be able to, a composting facility could sell on site. Not so much for the process of composting, it's for items for commercial sales. It is for items for sale, where you would display them as if it was mulch, stone, millings. You would go and purchase them. So the screening of the composting is done to produce the item. Selling the screening in that case is not landscape screening. So that's why it needs to be determined of what language you want to use, because screening is a broad variety of the interpretation of each individual.
This would be to go out and buy it wholesale and then retail it off the property.
Okay, Mr. Gaverick?
So this would be similar to what's down by Buck and Nobby's there, where they sell all the product? Or at any other landscape place, so that could be a numerous.
It could be like Sandman, Jack's,
Yeah.
Yes.
any landscape.
Blackstone.
And keep in mind, it's a composting facility. It's not a landscaping facility.
Correct.
Because right here it says, in red, in Z, and other material produced on site from composting operation. So what becomes after you take the stuff that's composted and you shift it out and you get the pieces of wood out, you get the stones out, I think we need to consider that a composting operation.
I think of an operation like this, if they're selling compost to landscapers, to builders, any business, if they're smart, they try to offer related products in one spot, so they're one-stop shopping, and that makes sense to me. And I'm thinking, maybe instead of these general terms, we might specify what other things that they might carry, say pea gravel, say river rock of different sizes. And, but I guess when you start talking about these type of products, you're talking about these big white blocks that they use to segregate everything, and then is that what we want to keep away from industrial, or next to a residential area, so they have to see that? if you look at a company like Sandman, they have those in their yard. Is that what we're trying to avoid by limiting what they can do with I-2 light industrial zoning?
I don't believe the intent is to limit the operation because the operation is a composting facility. I believe the intent is to allow the product that was produced on site to be sold on site to avoid moving it to a commercial site. So that was the intent when the ordinance was created, to allow mulch and the millings that were on site to be sold from the site. But I believe the intent is to move with other items.
Mr. Fritz? Oh, I thought you had your hand up.
Thank you.
So can a composting facility carry related products? Is there any reason why we wouldn't allow that?
I don't have an issue with it at all, so it's up to you guys.
Mr. Campreth?
You should keep in mind that this is industrial zoning. It's not commercial zoning for commercial resale. When I read this, I see them bringing rocks, millings, whether millings is, I'm not sure what that is. Screenings, in my view, could be rock, small rock, topsoil, sand. It also could be screening materials like fences and trees and things. It could possibly turn into a very big commercial resale operation, which is not what industrial zoning's for, or not what a composting operation is.
Mm-hmm.
So this could turn into Hovitzi's or any of these other places that sell these products with proper zoning.
Jody, can you explain exactly what we're doing with this amendment here? What are we looking to do tonight on this?
I'm looking for direction from the commission if they want to change the language, recommend to change the language to allow other items than what is produced on site.
So we're looking at item Z.
Z, letter Z only, and
the
that
item-
section only.
And
If you,
Okay,
if
sure.
you look at the part that's crossed out,
yeah,
that's what exists today,
right.
talking about striking that and adding the new text in red
Right.
in place of.
Where did the suggested wording come from?
I'm sorry?
Where did the suggested wording come from? The terminology?
I believe it was suggested when it went to the township board for direction to look at amending the language.
Okay.
Because what I read there is, it's a byproduct of when you compost the material that has rotted and made new soil, or whatever you want to call it, the topsoil. You're going to have rocks and that stuff like that. Not that they're going to bring on separate rocks, separate millings, and separate screenings.
However, if you allow it, it doesn't mean that we could prevent it because it would be permitted by ordinance to sell rocks on site.
Location of commercial.
But you can't produce any of that stuff on a composting site. So you can't produce rocks, you can't produce the millings and some
Yeah,
of the
it
other.
says right, yeah.
So,
Other materials that are produced on site from composting. You would be getting them from the produce, from the composting
No,
procedure.
I think the idea is that it would be purchased and then sold on site retail. We
Right.
bought wholesale.
I don't get that.
yep, just put a solid stop right behind where it says from the composting operation and just make that a solid stop. That was where the original language stops. So the new language would say materials found in incoming materials, then it would say, this is a separate caveat saying, then location of on-site commercial sales, so take that into consideration, on-site commercial sales, rocks, millings, screenings, and other material produced on-site from composting. So it included, again, the composting of on-site, but these other items, commercial sales of rocks, millings, screenings, and other materials from the site. So it did take both. Commercial from purchase from offsite and still let them do the material that comes as a byproduct from the compost.
We're not looking, the request is not to look to change anything that he is producing on site, his mulch, anything he's selling that he's producing currently. That is not the proposed change. The change is to allow other items to be sold that are not produced on site. So they would be items that would be brought onto the site for sale for retail sales.
So the existing one that's crossed out, that one they're allowed to bring stuff on?
No.
To sell it?
No, you couldn't.
Location of site, commercial sales and product.
That it says produced on the site from the compost.
So our main problem is this is industrial, not commercial. So we're trying to make it commercial available on an industrial site.
Yeah, because if he
Because
goes commercial, he
the
can't.
property next
compost.
door could be made commercial if it was zoned that way, and he could just sell right there, in other words.
It's possible, yeah, I suppose.
I was just trying to clarify,
Change
like,
the zoning of
it's
an
not-
adjacent lot and.
It's because we're producing something, the mulch, that's industrial, and now we're trying to turn it into a commercial operation.
You know, on that point, could a
Okay.
potential composter say, yeah, this is light industrial, but can I split my parcel and make this commercial so I can?
Yes, so let's also step back instead of mentioning he or they.
Right,
or
right,
who.
right.
This is whomever,
Correct, but we're just,
whether
He or
it's an
she.
existing
Yes, you're
or
right.
non-existing
any
operation.
industrial property would
And
be the
industrial-
same scenario.
It would have to go through the site plan approval process, and they would have to show where these items were going to be displayed on site for sales, plus have the space to provide for their composting facility, because retail sales would not be permitted only on an industrial site. So they would have to go through the entire site plan approval process with special approval for the composting and show where all those items were going to be displayed, and the windrows and the access through an entire site plan process.
So that's a possibility, a solution here, right? But it would all have to be approved
I'm not sure.
every step of the way,
It
right?
would be on the site that would go through the process. If you're specifically talking about the existing facility
No, in general.
in general, then it would go through any site that wanted to be created for composting would require special approval and site plan approval process.
Just for clarification, so any industrial, like, I'm just thinking of a few of our industrial in the area, like the Windows place, they don't have on-site sales because they're industrial. They sell it elsewhere.
Yes.
Same scenario.
Same
If
scenario.
we pass this, that they would be able to sell, not
Only on the, this is only directed to the specific composting ordinance.
Okay.
Not in industrial in general.
Okay.
No.
Thank you for the
Only-
clarity.
Only through the special approval through composting.
I see.
See, it's just hard if you allow something for one person and then the next person wants to do it. It's very arbitrary.
Well, like you just said, the industrial, look at, the windows, right down here in Industrial Park. Why shouldn't they come in then and say, wait a minute, I want to sell windows right out of my facility? Why can't I do that? It could be any kind, Michigan too. What if they want to sell their chairs right out the front door? Well, can't do that. So even though this is regarding composting, it sort of opens that door into any kind of industrial for people coming forward to say, it's industrial, what's the harm? I'm not hurting anybody. In fact, guys like that, okay, let's just, hate to, pull somebody out, but let's just say the windows, okay? Do you see anybody else selling windows out their front yard or, commercial business right down the street, retail sales? No. So he wouldn't hurt anybody. But now a composting facility could come in and then he could start selling everything that nurseries might sell, landscape companies might sell. So there's a totally different competition there.
Different models too.
Right.
Yeah, you're talking something that can be neatly packaged versus a bulk item that's
Right.
going to get loaded in the back of a pickup.
Correct.
And you can't pick something like that up at Kmart, because Kmart doesn't exist, but Walmart
anymore.
or Myers. So it's-
over there on Lewis.
Mhm.
They do the bulk mulch, but that's not industrial, I wouldn't think.
Different zoning.
Commercial. That's probably just linking it to.
Well, I suppose there's a reason why certain areas are zoned a certain way and not another way. And in this case, it's zoned industrial, and, unless they have an adjacent property, I'm talking about anybody now, and they can create that as a commercial or change it over to a commercial zone, and they can sell all they want.
How many acres they have there?
Who?
Huh?
Who are we talking about?
The compost, how many acres they have?
I don't believe there's a requirement. It is done through the site plan process of how much material they can take in, and that's all regulated with the state as well.
I think it may seem silly to have an adjacent property, but, I think there's a reason things are zoned certain ways, and it just shouldn't be deviated from to accommodate one business or two businesses. Any other thoughts on that? Any thoughts on changing the language that was highlighted? Should it be limited to 3 SKUs, pea gravel, river rock, boulders? I'm looking for ideas here. Otherwise, we're going to table this and move on because we're not getting anywhere. Okay, well, no other thoughts on the subject. Why don't we table this for a future meeting, and we'll all think about this, maybe share some ideas, by email, and then we'll discuss what we emailed and just try to figure this one out. It's a tough one. Any objection to moving on?
You still have to have a motion.
Let's have a motion to table. Who wants to do that?
I make the motion we table this for future evaluation.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Helms seconds. Mr. Graverick, you want to take a roll call?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Garvick's aye. Mr. Helm?
Aye.
Mr. Anger?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Public comment. Nobody's here, nobody's calling in, right? So, information, anything to pass on? Anybody want to share anything? Okay. Commission staff comment. Mr. Helm?
I think I'm good.
Mr. Anger?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Graverick?
Don't bring turtles to my place you find on the road, Jody.
No turtles to the farm or the zoo. I do have something to share. Jody passed on an invitation to Michigan State University and the Michigan Department of Treasury, did a presentation on capital asset management and planning, with the goal of identifying priorities, identifying sources of revenues to pay for capital improvements, variable expenses year to year, decisions have an impact for years to come, to set priorities, operational versus capital. About a year ago, it was probably more than a year ago, Nancy Tinneberry, who was a former member, township board member, and representative to the Planning Commission, brought up capital improvement plan, and it kind of had some interest, but it kind of fell dead in the water. We really haven't done anything since then. And Jody and I were speaking with each other last week, and she reminded me, hey, there's this event, and we really haven't looked at this, but it's something I think we need to do. I forwarded to all of you a couple of documents. One was the law regarding capital improvement plans and our responsibility as a planning commission. And I think for most townships that might be optional, but it said, and I thought it was really interesting, that if the township owns water or sewage, water/sewage, I don't know, I didn't say and or sewage, they are required to do a capital improvement plan. So I thought I'd revive this topic again. I'd really like you guys to look at the documents I sent. One of them is something that Nancy had put together last year. Basically, it's an overview that kind of describes how the process goes. She was thinking we have side committees, but I don't know if we need to do that. I think, we don't have a lot of topics all the time to discuss at our meetings. But what I'd like you guys to do, your homework assignment, is to think about ways that we can create parameters for identifying assets, like when they were purchased, how old they are, when they'll likely have to be replaced, and the rough estimates about how much it would be to do all of this. Once we come up with these parameters, I think, Rick, you could probably take it to Paul Peroni, Township Supervisor. He can pass it on to the department heads, and they can kind of fill in the blanks, delineate the assets. Nancy's outline, I think, said $10,000 and up, but according to the documents I was given from University of Michigan and the Department of Treasury, they said, I think it was like $2,500 and up. So that would probably include like computers. We're talking cars, vehicles, buildings, other major assets. Anybody have any initial thoughts? Go ahead, Jody.
I just wanted to add that at the end of the year, the Township Board, the Planning Commission did recommend what Nancy had provided, and it did move to the Township Board. And the Township Board did adopt what was presented for a CIP. So we do have at least the plan started. And then there are assets that are listed on there, and I do think that we should possibly start looking at that because it is part of the Planning Commission's responsibility to address those. And I know we're all learning this process together because it is new for everybody, including the Township Board. So if anybody is interested in that program, I believe they're offering the virtual through the Michigan State program again in December. So I can forward that on. If you're interested, please just shoot me an email and then I will send it back. And if you have any questions and any input or would like a copy of what was adopted by the Township Board, just include that in an email and I will scan it and send it back to you as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so I don't think it'll be that difficult. And she really got a good start on it with some buildings. But there's other things that I think the department heads, and they could probably even lend some insight. There was a dead link on that PowerPoint presentation. It was the Township of Cadillac, so I couldn't get that. But maybe we get some ideas from other townships in Michigan and see how they did it. So, anything else from you?
Did you get anything in from the committee that was disbanded?
I don't think there was a committee. I know I had volunteered to serve on it.
There was.
I don't remember getting or going aside.
And we had made the offer. They were gonna. We had made the list and everything, and then I think it was Jim had put a proposal on to go through all the major buildings, and so we had a line 0 to start with, and I think it was close to 50,000, wasn't it? The offer. You never saw that either? Because I'm trying to think of the guy who was the guy that sat right there last year? That
Dennis Jenkins?
Dennis. Yeah. He's the one that headed that up. I was on maybe 2 of them, 3 of them before they were kind of disbanded. And then once we made that offer, it just sat at the township.
So the column headings in this case of the starting document was the asset itself, its location, the year it was built, the value, year remodeled, how you'd rate the structure, and then what work has been done and maybe needs to be done. And basically, I think this is helpful. It gives the Township Board a snapshot or one place to look at to see where the assets are. Because I also sent this. This was a document showing the number of new home building permits. I was really surprised that it's 26 year to date. So it's really slowed down a bit.
In this area, yes, but outside, no.
Yeah. So kind of disheartening, but it'll pick up. I think that tail end will pick up because this was only half a year there, but the rate is like down about 33%. So these are things that the township board has to look at, where's this economy going? How's that going to affect tax revenue? All these issues. And then prioritize the assets that really need to be looked at. So if you could, think about other column headings, anything else we would need to know or would be helpful to know about these assets. We'll just create the headings and then pass them on to the department heads. So that's all I had. Mr. Fritz. Mr. Steiner.
Nope, I'm good.
Katrina. Mr. Camper. Nope. Mr. Reckerter.
One thing I wanted to add on to the CIP is that please keep in mind it is a working document, so we can review it and look at it at any time. It's not something that's set in hard stone that it can't be reviewed. Once the determination of things being renovated or needing repairs, the commission is the one that makes the determination to the town and gives recommendation to the township board on the order of the necessity for each building. So it is a working document, so we can begin to work on it. It should be reviewed soon, so I will definitely start getting that information together. Any input anybody may have is greatly appreciated.
Please.
That's all I had. Everyone have a good evening.
Okay, everybody have a
Thank
good
you.
evening. Motion to adjourn? Anyone?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Anger, any second? All right, Mr. Steiner seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion is adjourned.